So now some of you were in the classroom when Jimmy came during the campaign. How many of you were you all there? Great, okay, most of you were there, all right.
Okay.
So you came up to Mount Madonna during the campaign. I'm sure that was a busy time for you, so we really appreciated that.
Of course.
Congressman Panetta, thank you for seeing us. We are students from Mount Madonna School, as of course you know. We have questions prepared for you, but if you have any opening remarks, we'd really enjoy hearing what you have to say.
Sure. I think I'm going to start it off by talking about the vote that we just took. It was on the Farm Bill, which is something that I looked forward to voting on ever since I got here. But I think what happened is indicative of what I've experienced, unfortunately, in my first year in Congress, in the sense of there's been a real lack of process and procedure, and I think that's why we are left with that vote that we just took. The vote on the Farm Bill failed to come out of the House. I did vote against it, but I don't cheer that I voted against it, because obviously in our area we have a lot of agriculture. A lot of people rely on that bill and the funding that it provides. But unfortunately, we also have a lot of people on food stamps and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And 80% of the Farm Bill, guess what, is dedicated to food stamps. So it's a big part of it, and it's an important part of it. And unfortunately, the majority attempted to adjust the SNAP program. And they did that in a way that didn't allow for the process, unfortunately. And so that's why I felt it necessary, as well as every other Democrat and about, I think, 30 other Republicans felt it necessary to vote no. But once again, you know, this seems to be a problem here in Washington, D.C., where we can't seem to work together on these big issues that you're hearing about. And unfortunately, I think it tends to highlight the dysfunction that's here. But I can say that since I have been here, as dysfunction as it may seem, there's still a lot of fulfillment. And I can tell you it's very fun to be in this job. It's the best job I've ever had. And it's, yes, because of the things that we're doing out here in Washington, more so about the things that we're doing in the district, in the sense that I actually get to serve people and affect people's lives through the work and the service that we can provide them. But it's also the people that we're serving and the people I work with here on both sides, Democrat and Republican. And so I think it's very telling that you guys are here today on the day of this vote to kind of, and I know you guys were watching some of the committee, some of the amendment processes that took place. So I think it's important that you're here to kind of see this, and I'll actually get my feelings about it. And I look forward to continuing to talk to you about that, explain more about that process, talk more about D.C. But obviously it's always good to have people from the district, especially people of your age and of your talent, who are out here and get to experience Washington, D.C. So welcome. I look forward to having a good conversation with you.
Hello, I'm Phoebe. My classmates and I were pretty overwhelmed when we walked into the House of Representatives on Wednesday for a debate on the Farm Bill. What was it like when you stepped into the House of Representatives to cast your first vote?
Let me ask you a question before I answer that. What do you mean by overwhelmed, and why?
Well, I think before we went in there, none of us really knew where we were going. We just thought it was going to be like another room like this. And then we kind of walked in and it was just like a whole new world in this giant room. And there was like a couple people debating and everyone was kind of just like, whoa, like we're in the middle of it now. And so it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely. When you step on that House floor, it can be overwhelming, but obviously it's a bundle of emotions that you feel. And now that I step on the House floor, it's clearly about the policy and making sure we're doing the right thing and pressing the right button when we vote. But I can tell you, though, that each time that I go onto that House floor, each time that I walk up the steps to the Capitol and see the dome, I feel the same way as you do, in the sense of the overwhelming feeling is not necessarily a sense of confusion as to what's going on. It's more of a sense of pride. This is, like I said, this is a job where it brings a lot of emotions. but one of the strongest emotion that I have is a sense of pride in our government, in our democracy, and the sense of being an American. And it's absolutely an awesome feeling to know that I'm a part of that, as you all are. But to be part of the process of our democracy is something that I'll always cherish and absolutely relish each day that I go onto that floor. You bet that it can be overwhelming in regards to the policy aspect of it. But our job is to, as I say it, is to understand what exactly we're voting on. So each vote I take, staff and I have a briefing as to what it is that we're going to vote on, no matter what it is, be it a suspension bill, like they're naming a post office and the bill got kicked over from last Congress here. Those are pretty easy, vote yes, to a bill like a vote like we just took, but also all the amendments that led up to it. And I think you guys watched some of the amendment process. But I can tell you there are some members that may not be as prepared, and I experienced that when I first got here. And because I was, as you felt, a little overwhelmed, but the fact is because of that feeling, that motivated me to not feel that way. And I told myself and I told my staff, we're going to know every single vote that we vote on. And that's what we've been doing ever since. And so it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of preparation. And trust me, there are members that do go in there and kind of look up on the board and see how everybody's voting and vote the same way. I don't do that. I try not to do that. I hope I don't ever get to that point where I do that. I hope that I continue to have a good staff like I do who prepares me and briefs me, and so that I know that going into that House floor, that the only overwhelming sense I get is one of pride.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Sienna.
Hey, Sienna.
And I'm wondering if you can talk about what you do to run an effective campaign for a major office like this one.
As I've seen it this past 16 months that I've been in office, and year that I ran the campaign, the most effective thing that I believe that I can do as a representative of the 20th district and a candidate for that spot is to ensure that the district knows me. And in order to do that, it takes basically a lot of work in the sense that you have to show up. And so the best thing that people can tell me when I'm working either in the candidacy or for my candidacy or in my office is, you are everywhere. And I say, that's right, because that's the job. And as I've looked at my job, and as I looked at the election coming up, it's if I do my job, if I show up and I listen and I learn and I create policy and I help people, that's how I get elected. Not by going out there and basically just relying on TV or something like that. It's doing your job, making people know you do your job, making people know why you do your job, and making sure that they have that connection and that understanding of who you are. That's how you get elected. In this upcoming elections that we have, you hear about, the blue wave. The Democrats are going to, take back the House, things of that nature. It takes a hell of a lot more than just being a member of a party to get elected. And I've always said this, and I said this early on, it takes someone having a cultural connection to the district in order to get elected. In order to have that cultural connection to the district, you have to know the district, but more importantly, your constituents and the people who vote have to know you. And they have to trust you and they have to believe in you. But the first thing is they have to know you. And I do that by making sure that I am as in many places as I possibly can be. And so that's why I come home every weekend. And that's why I, spend, like this weekend, tomorrow, Saturday, I'm going to the King City Fair, something I've done for the past 3 years. And I'm going to be standing in that auction pit from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., basically helping the auctioneer on the bids. It's an excellent thing to do. I'd recommend it if you ever have time to get down to South Monterey County, because to me, that's what this community is about. They're very giving, but that's a whole nother story. But and then tomorrow night I got to go to the Chamber of Commerce. But then Sunday I have a wife and kids, so I like to spend at least a couple hours with them before I have to fly out on Sunday night and take the red eye back here. So it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of dedication. And I think those are the most important things to understand in being a candidate in order to create that, like I said, that cultural connection with not just the district, but with, more importantly, the people and the voters of the district.
Hi, I'm Amy. Having recently transitioned from the campaigning environment to creating legislation in Congress, can you explain the contrast between the intentions and promises of the campus and the reality of getting things done once you actually got here?
I think it's very important that you guys are here on this day in regards to getting a farm bill passed. I mean, I chose to be on the Ag Committee because I wanted to make sure that I was obviously on a committee that reflected our district, and agriculture being the #1 industry in our district by far, it was important that I be on that committee. And I also knew that it was something that I wanted to work on here in Washington, D.C., and that's bipartisanship. Because I do firmly believe that if you want to get long-lasting legislation that means something to everybody, it does have to be bipartisan. Everybody's kind of has to have skin in the game, and that's very important. I think the worst thing you can do is take a bill and shove it down people's throats. And unfortunately, we've seen that with the Democrats, and we've seen that with the Republican leadership. And to me, that's like I said, that's not how you properly legislate. And so I was a little dismayed when we came into the Democratic leaders of the Ag Committee, Colin Peterson, his chambers, all the Democrats on the Ag Committee, called him in there, and the first thing he said to us was, and this is amazing, it tells you how wise people are around here and how experience and being here really helps your understanding of getting things done. And he said to us, he said, I can tell you, back in 2013, they tried to mess with SNAP. And if they do that again in 2018, we're not going to have a farm bill. And what just happened? They tried to mess with SNAP, and we can't have a farm bill at this point. And so, I think I tell you that story in regards to your question of, I mean, there are obviously obstacles that come up when you're legislating. But I do believe that if the majority would have brought us into the fold when it came to their changes on the SNAP provisions, we could have got to a farm bill. We could have got to yes. After that meeting I had with Colin Peterson, like I said, I was a little worried, but during our hearings that we had leading up to the farm bill in the Ag Committee, we had 23 hearings on SNAP, all very positive. And so my thinking was, oh, this is going to be great, and we'll be all right with the farm bill. But none of those hearings were on the changes that they wanted to make. And literally less than a week before they dropped the bill, gave us the bill to read before the markup, that's where the committee gets together to vote on the bill, they gave us the bill. It's the first time we had to see it, to look at it, without any hearings on it. And that was a problem for us. And that was one of the biggest reasons why I was against this farm bill, because I was a prosecutor, and I always knew, I learned that being a prosecutor, you can't just go into court and say, he's guilty, and sit down. It's not how you prove cases, man, okay? You prove cases with evidence, witnesses, video, whatever, evidence in court. It's a slow process. It's an incremental process. But you put forward that evidence in order for the jury to see that evidence, and that's what they can base their verdict on. And unfortunately, what we're seeing in Congress is leadership on both sides putting forward the conclusions and then taking evidence to support that conclusion. No. You should have the evidence, and that's how you get your conclusion. And that's been a real problem, I believe, in getting things done in Washington, D.C. In the sense that there is the procedure is missing. It was funny, there was a great article, a quick article of one of my freshman classmates named Jamie Raskin. He's a constitutional lawyer, very smart guy. And in that article, they said, well, what's going on, what's missing for you in Congress? And he said, look, there's no process and procedure. The way we did it, he was in the state Senate here in Maryland. And he said, look, we would have hearings, we'd have people come in and testify, they'd tell us what was going on, and we could then debate over those hearings and talk about it, and then we'd come to our conclusion. And he says, that's just not here in Washington, D.C., and I agree with him. And I think that's unfortunate. You'll hear a lot of times, we need to get back to regular order. Well, that's what regular order is. And I just hope that in my time here, however long or however short it is, that we can get back to regular order when it comes to divisive, tough issues. One of the things I recommend you guys Google is John McCain's speech before he gave the thumbs down back in last July, 2 Julys ago, when he gave the thumbs down of the repeal of the ACA. Because in that speech, he talked about what's lacking here in Washington, D.C. And he gave such quotes, as you'll see when you read it. And I'd get the transcript. The video is good, but I like reading the transcript because I can mark words. And in that, he talked about how, he said, look, our government, our democracy is so quarrelsome and divisive that it allows for incremental progress. That it's okay to do something less than winning as long as you're moving forward. And I think that's what we fail to recognize a lot of times in Washington, D.C., especially leadership, in the sense of that it's, look, we can work through this. As long as you roll up your sleeves and do the work, that's how you push the ball down the field. It's not going to be a Hail Mary every time. You're not going to get a touchdown every time. But as a former fullback, I'm okay with 3 yards in a cloud of dust as long as you're moving the ball forward. And I think we need to do more of that in Washington, D.C., and I don't think people realize that that's what's missing.
Hi, I'm Ruby.
Hi, Ruby. Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Santa Cruz.
Okay, great.
In our interviews this week with Sean O'Keefe, the former NASA administrator, and Nancy Lindborg, the president of the U.S. Institute of Peace, we heard a common theme, which was the need to stay open to unexpected opportunities that have come our way. Can you speak about how unexpected opportunities have impacted your life?
Sure. Yeah, look, I know there are some of you that you guys know exactly your path forward. And man, more to you. If you got it all mapped out and you know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and what you're going to be, more to you. But I think I told you this back when I came and visited you. When I was your age, man, I didn't know what the hell I wanted to be. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. But a part of that, but fortunately I had some ethics that guided me. And obviously one of those was my work ethic. And so I did not go, when I graduated high school, as I told you, I played sports. And I was a wrestler and a football player, so I knew that I had to work hard to be good at my sports. But I wasn't focused on my academics. I was all about athletics. And so that's why I went to MPC, Monterey Peninsula College, a junior college. And once I went there, MPC allowed me to pivot from the athletic field into the academic classroom. And so to me, that's one unexpected challenge. Basically, not knowing what I do, but well, I better go to MPC. And boom, I turned it on. I worked full time, went to UC Davis, paid my way through UC Davis, realized, I'm interested in international relations. Then, what did I do? I majored in international relations. Because I went to UC Davis, I got an internship at the Department of State. I never knew that was going to happen, but I saw it and I applied for it. So I got that. And every naive IR major's goal is to work at the State Department. And I'm glad I did that because it made me realize this is exactly what I don't want to do. So, but an unexpected consequence was that I got to work here and I got to live here in Washington, D.C. with my father at the time, who was a representative. And he lived with 3 other representatives. And so my dad and I shared a full-size bed. I didn't say queen, guys. I said a full-size bed, probably, what you guys are in now. So there's 2 men in that. And then we were on the living room floor. And right across the way was Chuck Schumer, now senator. He was on the fold-out couch at the time. And then upstairs was George Miller, a congressman from Martinez, California, and then Marty Russo, congressman from Chicago. And every night I'd get out of Foggy Bottom, where the State Department is, and I'd come up here, and I'd hang out with those guys. And it was a great opportunity for me to see that these were a couple guys who, yes, they were congressmen, but you know what? Every morning I saw them putting on their pants the same way I would. But I also knew that they were going out and kicking ass and doing great things, and they were working their butts off. And so to me, they were also all attorneys. And so that's what prompted me to go to law school, because I knew that I felt that if I wanted to do anything professional, I needed to work on my written and my verbal word. And so I went to law school. Did I know I wanted to be an attorney? No, but I knew it would be a good education to have. So I went to law school, and I can tell you, like I say, I wasn't too fond of law school. All right, but I can tell you, it's not what I got out of the classroom that I remember. It's what I got outside of the classroom that I remember. In between my first and second summer of law school, I went to Europe. I studied in Europe. Had one of the best times of my life. It was great. I recommend that if you can. Second summer, I got a job at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. I had never heard of the Alameda County DA's office, but I knew a prosecutor was public service, and that's kind of the way I was raised. That was kind of where I was going. So I applied, interviewed, fortunately got the job, and it was an outstanding experience. Unexpected. Didn't realize that. But you know what? I wanted to be it was great. And then the third summer, law school gave me a foundation to study for, and thank God, passed the bar on the first time. And so was able to do that. And then boom, they called me a week later, Alameda County, and I got a job as a prosecutor in Oakland, California. Unexpected. Did not know I was going to do that. And then, from there it went, from there I same thing. It was, I was a DA for a long time. Obviously that's where I met my wife. But during that time, that sense of service started to kind of bubble up. And joining the military was something I always wanted to do. But I didn't have the fortitude early on to do it. But I thought, I better do it now before I regret not doing it. And so I literally signed up and joined the Navy Reserve. And, like I said, I didn't know I was going to do this, but I just knew there was something that I wanted to do, and I just did it. And I got to that point where maybe I matured enough to where I could do it. And, I'll be the first to admit I'm probably a late bloomer, as my mom calls me. But that's okay, as long as you learn from it and go forward. And so that's what I did. I joined the military, but I knew that I wanted more out of it. I liked being a weekend warrior. I liked wearing the uniform, but I knew that there were people sacrificing a lot more than I was at that time, wearing that exact same uniform I was. And so I volunteered, and I went forward to Afghanistan. Served in Afghanistan with the Special Operations Unit as an intelligence officer. Great experience, It was an invaluable experience. And like I said, I never knew that that's what I was going to do, but I just did it. And then I came back home, joined the DA's office, and Sam Parr retired. And so I figured by that point, it's like I knew that this is what I want to do. But to answer your question, I know that it's like these aren't things that just kind of pop up. But the fact is that, like I said, early on, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I heeded the advice of my mother, and that's to never let the grass go under your feet. Always do something. And by always do something, you're going to create more opportunities. Going to school, working, going out there, being able to put yourself out there, taking those risks in those certain areas, be it school, be it work, that's how more opportunity pops up. And so, that's what basically I can say unexpected opportunity has done it. But part of me wants to answer you and said, they might have been unexpected. The important thing is not that they were unexpected. The important thing is that there were opportunities that came up, and I took advantage of them.
Hi, I'm Gracie. I'm from Watsonville.
Oh, good.
In a recent interview we did with former Secretary of State George Shultz, he told us the importance of respecting your adversaries, and with respect comes credibility. In an interview with the Washington Journal, you said, Democrats need to make sure that credibility is associated with our national security. Do you think the U.S. is doing a good job presenting ourselves as credible in terms of national security? If not, what do you think we should do differently?
It's some common sense behind my answer, in that, when you enter into a deal, you uphold that deal. And unfortunately, I believe that we are not doing that with this administration, and therefore it hurts our credibility. You do not enter into something as with such magnitude as the Paris Climate Accords and back out of it. You do not enter something as a deal such as that limits a country's ability to develop nuclear weapons and then back out of it. Yes, if you're not happy with it, then maybe talk about it, renegotiate it. But you don't, it's what we learned as kids. You don't back out of deals. And I believe that when we do that, that's going to hurt us as we move forward in dealing with other countries. And that hurts our leadership. And I do believe that if I am of the attitude that America has to lead, because I believe that if we don't lead, then the problem is that there may be other entities, other countries, or other leaders that fill that vacuum with other values. And that's why I think it's important that America must lead, because I do believe in our values. And I believe that if we do not, we create a vacuum in which other people will fill. And they may not be as friendly to our values and to our citizens. And so I think that's very important. I think that everybody has to realize that.
Hi, I'm John from Watsonville. A few years ago, I attended the annual Veterans Day celebration at the Vets Hall in Watsonville. And you spoke to a really large, diverse crowd, and you gave a speech that commended coming together on Veterans Day. I was really inspired by your speech, and I could see that you're really dedicated. I also read that you're on the Armed Services Committee. Do you think you could talk a little bit about the connection that you have with people who have served?
Sure. You talking about here in Congress or just kind of at all? Everybody, all veterans.
You're talking about veterans or veterans in Congress, both, huh?
Both?
Yeah, let's hear about both.
All right. Yeah, look, I believe that there's no doubt, one of the reasons why I joined the Navy, or always had the desire to join the Navy or to join the military, was obviously I had a sense of service, all right, the way I was brought up. But I also, I for some reason, as I kind of put it, I wanted to be a part of our nation's history, And to me, being in the military, that was how I could, be written into that book. And I believe that, when people who serve, we do have that bond. We not only have that bond with this country and the values and our beliefs, we have that bond with each other, because we basically signed that dotted line and said, yeah, we're willing to serve. More importantly, we're willing to sacrifice for something. And so that's one of the main reasons why when I did get out of the military, I continued to serve those who served us, as I like to say. And I think that's important that we do that. And so that's why I worked with the Veterans Transition Center and helping homeless veterans get basically their feet back underneath them, in which they can continue to run forward. It's why I worked on the Central Coast Veterans Cemetery there in Fort Ord, getting the proper funding so that we have a veterans cemetery on the Central Coast. I mean, that area, as you know, has a lot of veterans in that area because of our many military installations, not including, actually, I should say, the former Fort Ord. And so it's a big, prominent veteran community, as you saw that day, every Veterans Day there. And it's also why, as a prosecutor, I thought it was important that we have a veterans court, and we did not have it. Santa Cruz had one, San Luis Obispo had one, San Joaquin County even had one, but Monterey County did not. And so I worked with Judge Sam Alvarado and had to push back a little bit on even my boss at the time, the DA, in order to let them know that it was, it's something kind of, if you build it, they will come. And lo and behold, we were able to get a court, and I can tell you that there are veterans who have been assigned to that court and are getting the proper treatment that they legally deserve. It's actually the law now, based on the certain crimes they commit, that they should get this type of treatment. But it's also the right thing to do, because the number of veterans can have illnesses based on their service that contribute to the reasons as to why they committed the crimes, and that has to be recognized. But I can also tell you it's a bond that not just that I have with veterans in the community, but what I have with veterans here in Congress. And I think that's a good thing. And I think it's a good because you see that the people who serve kind of demonstrate the same beliefs that they did when they served in the military. And they're exerting those beliefs now. They're showing those beliefs now in the sense that it's really not kind of about party. It's about country, and it's about getting things done. And these are qualities I think that we all developed. We all had them inside of us, but obviously we developed them. They came out in our time in the military. And so, you know, a lot of my close friends are veterans here. We have certain veterans groups here. And I think that's important for Washington, D.C., to have more people like that. Not just that they're veterans, okay? But as long as you have that understanding, and like I say, and veterans do, of what it takes to get things done. And so that's very important. And look, in policy-wise, of course my time in Afghanistan in the military helped me understand the things I'm dealing with now. And so, you know, that's, you know, I enjoy, you know, when I hear about, I worked with the Special Forces team, like I said, so when I hear about Special Forces and I hear about their operations and their planning and their policy and the funding that's necessary for them to carry out their missions, I have an understanding, better understanding of that. There's no doubt about that. So clearly it's given us a foundation to understand the policy, but I think more importantly, I do believe that it's our connection that allows us to get things done when it comes to policy. I mean, we just had, similar to the Farm Bill, each year the House Armed Services does the National Defense Authorization Act. And once again, it's very bipartisan. And fortunately, we passed it, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, pretty much 59-1. There was only one person that voted against it. And I think a lot of that has to be with the veterans that are on that committee, but more importantly, an understanding by a lot of members that are on that committee of how important our defense is and how important it is to take care of those who are serving us.
Hi, I'm Carl. I'm over here.
Hey, Carl. How are
I'm
you?
from Santa Cruz. So several people we interviewed earlier this week have talked about the need for a greater diversity in government. Susanna Welford, president of Running Start in particular, discussed the trend of people voting for what they're used to seeing, which creates a lack of diversity in our elected officials. How can this change so our government looks more like the constituencies they serve?
I can tell you one of the great things that I've learned about Congress is that it's very diverse. I'm not just talking, though, about ethnics. I'm talking about politically as well. And that's something that I believe that we on the Central Coast need to understand. And that when we look at something like immigration, which is so important to us on the Central Coast, our economy, our communities, our culture, it's easy for us to sit there and say, it's easy for us to sit there and say, immigration is the right thing to do. As a grandson of immigrants, as someone who grew up on the Central Coast, I get it. I'm sure all of you get it. But then you start dealing with these other districts and representatives of these other districts. And you realize that outside of the Central Coast, outside of California, that there are districts that hardly have any immigrants in it. And so you got to ask yourself, are the voters putting forward someone that represents their values? It may be someone that looks like them, but you also got to ask, is it just based on looks, or what does that person stand for as well? And so I think it's something that we have to take into account when answering that question as well. And that, yes, there may be someone from Iowa who is a white male, but then looking at the constituency of that district, they could be, all predominantly white. But that may affect their politics as well. And we have to understand that in working with that person, I believe, as a member of Congress. How do we change getting more in there? Well, look, I think it's like anything, making sure that more people have opportunity, ensuring that more people of color have opportunity to then advance and give them the opportunities that if they want to run for Congress, then make sure they have that opportunity to do so. But it's the foundational areas that you have to ensure. Making sure they have a good education, making sure they have the ability to, as we know on the Central Coast, it can be difficult to live on the Central Coast. It's very expensive. But you got to make sure that we have the infrastructure, we have the jobs, and basically we have the resources to ensure that everybody can have the opportunities there to live on the Central Coast. So there's a number of levels to that question. That's not an easy answer, but I think the most important thing is understanding that we do live in a very diverse country, ethnically, but also politically. And you have to have that understanding in my position.
Hi, I'm Priyanka. Another common theme we have encountered in our interviews this week is the need for more effective communication between people who have differing opinions. Have you found ways to communicate with the opposing side when debating issues in the House of Representatives?
Yeah, look, one of the best pieces of advice my father gave me is, look, in Congress and in life, it can apply to life, is you're always going to deal with people who aren't nice, who have you have disagreements with. But look, in our country, you got to be able to get along with those people or work with those people in order to get things done. And so what I found in Washington, D.C. is that, sure, there may be some people who are a little surly, but for the most part, that's one of the best parts about this job, is that there are a lot of good people here on both sides of the aisle. And in order to develop those relationships, you actually just got to sit down with them and talk to them. And so I've made it a point to work with Republicans as much as possible. Because like I said, that's what this democracy is about. Both sides coming to the table, working out their disagreements once you hear the evidence, and coming to a compromise. But in order to do that, you have to have that understanding, and that gets back to my question, that answer I gave earlier. You have to have an understanding of where they're from. And the only way to get that understanding is if you talk to them. And so that's why I make it a point to join caucuses that are bipartisan, not just Democrat caucuses, but Democrat and Republican caucuses. It's not just about the party, it's about the issue. And so one of the caucuses that I'm most proud to be on is this caucus called the Problem Solvers Caucus. And basically it's purely bipartisan caucus, 24 Democrats, 24 Republicans. And basically every week we come to the table and we actually talk about issues. For example, the last meeting we had yesterday, we had a discussion about how we can make Congress better, what rules we can put in place in order to make Congress run more efficiently. And so these are Democrats and Republicans who are sharing ideas. And so it actually just takes effort. Common sense answer to an understandable question, but it just takes effort. Being able to talk to the other side, that will allow you the foundation to develop personal and professional relationships with the other side. And I think that's what you have to do. But I mean, like I said, it's, our time here in Washington is limited. I mean, and I think partly because of, this. You look around, everybody's always on their cell phone. We're always being distracted. And so having that time to get to know one another takes effort. Part of it is caucuses, but I also make it a point to go out to dinner with Republicans once a week. I live with Democrats and Republicans. I work out with Democrats and Republicans. But trust me, it'd be easy just to go back into my blue camp, in the Democratic camp. It'd be easy, personally, it'd be easy politically. We have a very Democratic district. I don't have to reach out to the other side. I could just vote the party line and go along to get along. But I have a firm belief that's not why I'm here in Congress. I am here to get stuff done. And in order to get things done, I firmly believe that you have to have relationships with all sides, because that's our democracy.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Indigo. I'm from Santa Cruz. We've spent a lot of time in class reading and discussing the ways in which people participate in a democracy that goes beyond simply voting. Now more than ever, it seems that our country needs active and engaged citizens. Can you talk a bit about what you think are the responsibilities of an engaged citizen?
I think, what is our country is one of what? It's one of we the people, right? So guess who it's left up to? It's left up to us to get things done. It's left up to you, and it's left up to people to participate. Obviously, as you nailed it, and I know you said, but beyond it, but the most important thing you can do is vote. I believe that. Beyond it, second thing is basically being a part of your community. Start at a grassroots level to get involved. I'm sure, I mean, nowadays, I'm sure you guys have, volunteer hours you have to do and things like that. We didn't have that as a kid. All right, I think that's why my focus was athletics, because nobody was telling us, oh, you need to go volunteer here and volunteer for that and do that. But I think it's very admirable, and I think it's appropriate that that you do that, because that kind of gives you a sense of what just doing something, just by doing it, just by going out and volunteering, how you can affect other people. And to me, that's what our country is about, basically working so that you can help other people. You know, a quote I always say is something that Obama said in his 2012 inauguration, and he said, look, although our rights are self-evident, they are not self-executing. So we have our rights, but you know what? It's up to us to exercise our rights. But beyond that, I believe it's up to us to make sure that other people can exercise their rights. And to me, that's what public service is about. Giving people power to have the opportunity to excel, to succeed, to exercise their rights. And I think, to me, that's what our country's about. And you start that off by just getting that sense of service. I would just say, do anything. Develop that sense inside of you of what it means to give back to this country and community that has given all of us so much. And, you know, you can do that a number of ways, and I'm sure you guys know more about it than I do based on the requirements of the volunteer time and everything that you guys have been doing. And that's important. And I'm telling you, the more you do that, the more you're going to develop that sense, and that sense is what's going to direct you to then participate in our country. It either is or it isn't. But I think the more you do it, the more you're going to have that moral compass to direct you to serve our country.
Hi, I'm Noah. I'm from Aptos. Since you have been the son of a prominent political figure and are now one yourself, can you talk about the role family has played as it relates to a political career?
When I was growing up, my dad was in this position, and my mother was his volunteer district director. So they worked their butts off, man. But I can tell you they did a great job keeping politics off the kitchen table. And a big decision that they had to make was whether or not we were raised here in Washington or whether or not we're raised back home. And thank God my parents chose to raise us back home, because, you know, I didn't have my dad's life. I was allowed to have my own life. And so were my brothers, for better or for worse, okay? I mean, my parents were 70s parents, kind of do your own thing types of parents. But obviously my parents weren't helicopter parents, and they weren't telling us to do our homework and things of that nature. But that allowed me to grow on my own. It allowed me to find my own way. And that's, I think, what my parents wanted. They made sure that we kind of, like I talked about, that moral compass, that we had that. Obviously through religion. I'm Catholic, went to church every Sunday, still do. But also with, you know, the sense of basically giving back. They didn't really tell us to do that, but, you know, we always knew that our grandfather came here because he wanted to live the American dream of giving his sons and daughters a better life. Okay, that's what I think is the American dream. I think that's why so many people come here. They want to give their children, their progeny, a better life. But the way we were also told, though, and something I mentioned earlier, because we were able to live the reality of that dream, then we should always give back to the country and community that gave us those opportunities. I didn't know what that was, but that sense was inside of me. And so I think that's why I went into the DA's office. That's why I joined the Navy. That's why I'm in this position. It wasn't what I heard in my house that kind of steered me to this line of work. It was what I heard outside the house. And what I mean by that is, to this day, people still come up to me and tell me about the service they received from their Congress member 20, 30, even 40 years ago. Because what I heard from them is that their congressman actually helped them with an issue, a personal issue. And that's what I like about this job so much. That's what inspired me to run. Because I saw that in this job, you can actually, one, you can help people, you can affect people, but more importantly, you can affect their families and you can affect their future. One guy came up to me, he was a strawberry farmer from Watsonville, Bill Munkovich, and it was at the Pajaro Chamber of Congress. And he would tell me, he said, look, I got to tell you, back in the floods of '82, my farm was wiped out, and we didn't know what to do. But guess what? I went to your dad's office, and 3 weeks later, I got a call from the Small Business Administration. 3 months later, I got a loan from the SBA. And he said, because of that loan, look at me now. I'm the biggest strawberry farmer in Watsonville. I was at the Strawberry Festival in Watsonville a couple months after that. And this gentleman comes up to me and he says, Jimmy, I got to tell you, your dad saved my marriage. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I started, I'm like, okay, I want to know what the, It's like, no, I'm serious. I was a Mexican immigrant, and I was working in the fields, and I had my legal permanent residency. But I met my wife in the fields, and she was from Nicaragua, and she was about to be deported, and we didn't know what to do. And so we went and saw our congressman, and our congressman basically allowed her to stay here, allowed her to get her legal permanent residency. We ended up getting married, and it was great. I was like, nice. It was funny because and this is a true story, he's like, she ended up leaving me though. I was like, what? But literally I was like, wow. I was like, why did you tell me that story? And he's like, that's not the point. The point is that I needed something that would affect my life. I went to my congressman, we went to our congressman, and we got the help and the service that affected us. And that's what it's about. And that's what I love about this job, is that you can actually, just by doing your job, by providing those constituent services that we provide in the district, basically as I see it, that I am that bridge from the district to the bureaucracy of Washington, D.C. and back. I'm that bridge. It can be very overwhelming, but that's our job, to help people deal with that. And so that's the best thing about this job, is that you can actually help people, but know that through that help, you're affecting their future, which ultimately affects the community. And that's what affected me growing up, under having that understanding. And it's funny, I didn't realize that not many members who I came in with understood this. They come here to affect policy and whatever, it's like they don't understand the effect that you can have by just doing your job, providing those constituent services. It was understanding. It was interesting, but I had that understanding because I saw it and I heard it firsthand. And so that clearly has affected me in why I'm here and how I do my job.
Congressman, I know we're just about out of time,
Yeah.
and I want to thank you for the time you've given us. Before you go, I'd like to do a little lightning round and tell them what you heard that you noticed that struck you, that had value to you. And we're going to be brief. Okay.
I remember you said this when you came forward at the school, but when you said always do something, and I remember you said don't let the grass grow under your feet.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing to live by, and
Good. Yeah, no, look, I appreciate that, Will, but that's like I said, that's kind of been my life, these unexpected opportunities. But the only way I got those opportunities because I just kept on going forward, and more stuff keeps on coming at you the more forward you get.
I'd love to hear about you being the bridge between the people and the bureaucracy. I think that is awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. I think it's inspiring. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, that's what it's about. I can't stress that enough. I appreciate that you caught that. I can't stress that enough. That's my priority. My priority are the constituents on the Central Coast, because I was fortunate enough to grow up under a true public servant that actually provided that service to people. And we saw that with Sam Farr. He did the same thing. We've been lucky to have Congress members that understand that that's their job, that's the priority, and I will continue to do that. That's why I'm here.
Well, there was a lot of individual things that I thought, but a way to bridge them all together for time's sake is just that your sense of service and generosity and your passion for just giving back to the people. I think that's very inspiring and something that I definitely want to bring back when I get back home.
So lots of things, but I remember at the beginning of the interview you were talking about incremental progress. on Congress as opposed to just trying to get one big bill passed, like just taking one step at a time. And now I'm thinking that actually relates back to what you were saying about life, about not letting the grass grow under your feet. Always be moving forward somewhere. Take the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess on that thing is you also got to realize, you may have an idea of where you want to go, okay? And that's great. But when you do something, when you're at school, when you're at college, focus on that, because that's how you're going to get here. Amen. And if you don't focus on what you're doing at the time, if you're just constantly thinking of the better thing or the next thing, you're not going to get there, because people are going to see that, and that's going to affect the way you do things. Trust me. I just hired an intern from UCSC. She was my intern. And the only reason I hired her is because she was good as being an intern, not because she's good at the position she's in now. I hired her because she was a good intern. And that's how people move up. It's basically making sure they can do their job. I want you to do your job. I want you to do it well. And then if you do that, then I'll hire you for the next thing. You know what I mean? Then you move up. So just be aware of that when you go, because you guys got so many opportunities ahead of you right now. I'm jealous because you guys got some great things coming up. But always be mindful that when you're in that position, that's where your focus has got to be. And trust me, other doors are going to open up because of that.
I liked what you said about having to debate the issue and show the evidence before reaching the conclusion and not the other way around, because
Exactly.
I never thought about that before in terms of what's going wrong in the system.
Yeah. And like I said, I learned this as a prosecutor. I was so fortunate to have that job as a prosecutor. I believe, a lot of people say, oh, were you in office before then? I said, no, even better, I was a prosecutor, because a lot of those skills that I learned in the courtroom I'm using now, to be honest with you. One, it's basically understanding what you need to prove something, to prove your argument, and that's evidence, that's facts. But two, being a prosecutor is about credibility. What you say means something. And you cannot basically go back on your words. It's very important you don't do that. And I think, unfortunately, there are people here who don't abide by that sometimes. But you got to realize that your word is the most important thing you have. And it was true as a prosecutor. It's true as a Congress member. It's going to be true, as you'll see, as students and as citizens of this country.